Hi everybody, my name is Jens Larsen. In this video I want to talk about the augmented scale. The augmented scale is a great symmetrical scale that you can put to use if you're looking for some special effects or some surprising sounds on a tonic chord, because it works really well for a major 7 chord, and you can also put it to use over a minor major chord, so something that's like a tonic minor chord. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, about improvising over chord changes, checking out harmony and chord progressions, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. The first thing we should notice is that this scale is symmetrical in major thirds. So anything you play, you can move around in major thirds and you'll get the same type of structure. And that also means that it's kind of easy to really map out what's available in the scale, because if we find out everything that's on, so if we look at the structure, so C, E and G sharp or A flat are making out the one triad, and B, E flat and G are making out the other one. And if we find everything that we can for C, then we also have everything, because it will be completely the same as what we have for E and for A flat. And the same goes for the B, E flat and G. So really we can just start checking out everything that we can find for C and B, and then we've covered everything in the scale. In that way this scale is a lot simpler and maybe also less interesting compared to something like a melodic minor scale or a major scale, because that's a much more complex scale in how it's constructed. In this video I'm also going to focus mostly on the different arpeggios you have available, because usually the way this is used in jazz, which is what I play and what I teach, is as a scale that you use when you're improvising over some chord. So it's a little bit less interesting what types of harmony you can make in here, but it's very interesting what kind of arpeggios and what kind of melodies you have available when you start checking out the scale. So that's what's going to be the main focus. So if we look at the main construction, of course we have the C augmented triad and the B augmented triad. But what you can also notice is, of course, that if you have an augmented triad, so like the C augmented triad, we can also have a C major triad. So it goes to, so it follows, I'm not going to talk about that every time, but it follows that if we have C, we'll also have A flat and E. You can kind of see that by taking the augmented triad here and then trying to lower one note, because if I lower the A flat, I get a C major triad. If I lower the E to an E flat, I get a first inversion A flat major triad. And if I lower the C to a B, I get a second inversion E major triad. So we have those triads. I think that's probably the sound that most people sort of connect with the augmented scale in jazz anyway, because you have this type of pattern that's used quite a lot. There's a version of Night and Day with Jonathan Kreisberg where I think he's literally playing it in this key. That's worth checking out. That's also, of course, part of checking out how to play it is to play lines like this where you're trying to connect the major triads, and you're just here using that major triads are really strong melodies, and you can make interesting stuff with that, and you can sort of use the fact that they're strong melodies. With a leading note here, because there's no B flat in the scale. So those kind of melodies you can check out. Of course you can do the symmetrical thing, which would be stuff like this, but you can also just try and look at it as being 3 different sounds. So if you're using this on a C major 7, where it will fit because you have a C major 7 in the scale, and then just try and hear it as being a mix of these different sort of colors that you put on top. So and then that kind of has the effect of sort of shifting colors on top of the chord, which is a nice effect to add to a solo, I think. As you've seen until now in the augmented scale, we have the augmented triad on C, and we also have a major triad. And in fact we also have the minor triad, because we can take this triad and then replace the E with an E flat, so we have a minor triad as well. So that would be something like, in terms of extending the triads, we actually only have 1/7 available in the scale if we're looking from C. So we have our C triad, or of course C minor or C augmented, and the only seventh we can add to this one would be a B. So that means that we have a C major 7 and a C augmented 7 and a C minor major 7 in the scale. And of course you can start working a little bit with some of those. If I combine the different major 7 chords in a line, that could be something like this. And a simple example of doing something similar with a major 7 sharp 5 arpeggio could be something like this. And of course we can also do that with the minor major 7 arpeggios. As you can see, I'm returning to this C major chord at the end of a lot of phrases, and that's just to sort of still remind the ear, both yours and my own, what sound this is used on, because this is probably going to be used on something that's going to sound like a C major 7 or maybe some sort of A minor major, but in this case, just to keep it related to the kind of chord where you might use a C major is really probably the top candidate for this scale. And if we extend these chords a bit further, then we can also add one type of 9, because if we take, let's just stick with the C major 7, so we have our C major 7 arpeggio here, and well, the root, one more time, is not going to be really much of an extension, and of course the E is just doubling the third in this case, but we do have a sharp 9, so we can add a C major 7 with a sharp 9, and that will work as well also for the C major 7 sharp 5 to have a sharp 9 in here. For the C minor, then, so the C minor major, the E flat is not really going to be of any use. You could of course think about using the E as a flat 11, I guess, but really what you're going to end up with is kind of the same type of sound. So when you're improvising with this, it's really mostly just going to spell out a major 7 with a sharp 9. Another thing you probably want to notice with this is also that now that we're coming up and adding 9s to the chords, then we're really just repeating some of the material that we already found, but just over a bass note. So a C major 7 sharp 9 is in fact an E minor major arpeggio with a C in the bass. And of course the same goes, so we have the other option, which is like the C major 7 sharp 5 with a sharp 9, which is E major 7 over a C bass note, so this sound. In this way we pretty much covered everything that we'll find from C, and of course that's the same as what you'll find for E and for A flat, and half the time, as you can tell when I'm making lines, I'm just finding something from C and then trying to move that around and sort of play. Really what I'm doing is really playing sort of different islands of each of the sort of tonic areas, so C, E and A flat, and then using that to create lines to have those sort of shifting colors on top of the bass note, which is probably what I like the most about this scale sound. But you can also, of course, also look a little bit at what is available for the B augmented triad, because that's surprisingly little. We of course have the B augmented triad, but really what happens here is that as soon as we change one of the notes in this triad, we're going to end up with something that we already covered. So if I change the B to a C, then we have a C minor, so really, and the E flat could be changed to an E, but then we get E minor, and otherwise we get A flat minor. So in that way, we're not really gonna get another type of B chord than this augmented triad, and every time we change something, then we're gonna end up with one of the triads that we already covered when I was talking about the different options on the note C. Now that we've pretty much found all the structures that are in the scale, then of course if you're improvising with them, you do have more options than playing them as stacks of thirds, in the way that we ended up constructing them in the first part of this video. So you can also start working with other ways of playing those same chords and arpeggios that might give you another set of melodies. One of the ones that I like to use a lot is shell voicings. So as an example, if we take the minor major chord and then use that as a shell voicing, then a C minor major would be. So a lick with that could be something. And you can of course also experiment with using open voiced or spread triads. So that could be something like this. If you've seen more of my videos, you probably know that I like to use drop 2 voicings as arpeggios as well. And if you do that with this scale, that sounds like this. In that way, there's of course a lot more available than just stacks of thirds and moving around arpeggios in major thirds. And you can really make some more interesting and more surprising colors and sounds just by combining the open voiced or spread voiced triads or the drop 2 voicings and shell voicings. If you want me to make a video breaking down some of those lines and making some of the lines and talking about that, then let me know in the comments. That's definitely something I can look at. In terms of chord voicings, there are a few ways you can approach it and look for them. Of course, you can use stuff where you just take one of the voicings that are in the scale already and then try and move that around. So probably like a major 7 sharp 5 could be something to do. But you also almost get the sound of another chord progression unless you really have sort of the bass note all the time. The other thing that I do is, one other thing I do is to just take like a standard, in this case like a standard C major 7, and then just see if I can fit something else on top of it that I don't have already. So this one is like a C major 7 and then I'm just adding a flat 13 or an A flat on top of it. You can also switch that around and then make that a C major 7, sharp 5, and then add the G on top. And of course also the same with the shell voicing, so adding the sharp 9. And you can look at what it would be like if you're taking another chord, so a major 7 voicing of one of the other chords, and then put that on top of a bass note. So I think the one that's most effective is probably the E major 7 over C. That was some of the structures and some of the ideas that I use when I'm working with the augmented scale, and hopefully it's also some insight in how I actually just take a scale apart and just really look at the notes and try to build chords. The reason why I want to do that once in a while is also just because it's like a really basic way to figure out what is available, and also sometimes if you figure something out, you'll realize that it might be an inversion of something else, or you can relate it to another chord, and that's really useful to do. I think it's also the kind of thing you can do with the other scales. You should probably do it with like melodic minor and harmonic minor and or diminished and major, of course. Also just to come across all the arpeggios that you don't normally come across. And then once you have material like that, don't forget to really look at, well, what kind of melodies can you make if you use shell voicings, if you use open voiced triads, or if you use drop 2 voicings. Because all these ways of playing the same notes in different ways are just going to be things that you can easily tap into and get a lot of interesting melodies out of. And they will sound really different in terms of, like a drop 2 voicing and a shell voicing really doesn't sound the same. And it certainly also is a different sound than just a plain old stack of thirds. An interesting thing about the augmented scale is that you can't really use any quartal harmony in there because it's so related to the major third interval, which is also why it's called augmented, of course. That there's no real room for any kind of quartal harmony in there. You have like 1/4, but as soon as you want to sort of find another fourth, then you're gonna end up with a triad, really. That's sort of my thoughts on it. If there's something that you think I missed, if there's something that in a way that you use the augmented scale, or if there's an arpeggio that I didn't think about, then please do let me know. It's always nice to get some new ideas. And if you want me to make a video where I break down some lines using this material, then let me know about that in the comments as well. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, if you want to explore some interesting harmony and analyze chords and check out some scales and arpeggios, then subscribe to my channel. I publish a new video every Monday and Thursday, and I've been doing this for quite some time, so there's already a lot of material on my channel. The reason I can make all these videos is that I have the support from a small community of people over on Patreon. It's because of the support of my patrons that I find the time to make these videos, and if you support me on Patreon, I can also give you something in return. So if you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and on to next week.